She wasn't the woman he had been waiting for. The letter had promised a cheerful young bride, willing to build a life on a lonely cattle ranch. But when the stagecoach stopped beneath the blazing western sun, only one exhausted young woman stepped down, carrying a worn leather satchel and a heart full of secrets. Before the cowboy could even welcome her, she quietly confessed something that changed everything. "I'm not the woman who wrote those letters," she whispered. "She's my sister, and she couldn't come, so I came instead." The entire ranch fell silent. Had she lied? Had she stolen another woman's future? Or had she just made the greatest sacrifice of her life for her family? The cowboy now faced a choice no one could make for him. Would he send her back across the dangerous frontier, or trust the courage standing before him? Stay until the very end, because the decision he makes will change two lives forever and prove that destiny sometimes arrives wearing someone else's name. Spring sunlight stretched across the endless prairie as wagons rolled westward toward the Montana Territory. Among the travelers sat 22-year-old Clara Bennett, her fingers tightly wrapped around a bundle of letters that did not belong to her. Every mile carried her farther from the only home she had ever known and closer to a future that had never been meant for her. Months earlier, Clara's older sister, Evelyn, had answered an advertisement from a respectable cowboy named Samuel Carter. He managed one of the largest cattle ranches in the valley and hoped to find a wife willing to build a family beside him. Their letters slowly grew warmer. Evelyn had promised she would come west before summer. But when departure day arrived, fear won. Evelyn admitted she could never survive the wilderness or leave their aging mother. She begged Clara to tear up the letters and forget the whole arrangement. Clara looked at her frightened sister and understood something painful. Samuel Carter had prepared a home, planted a garden, repaired a cabin, and waited with hope because of promises written in those letters. Someone had to tell him the truth. "I'll go," Clara quietly said. Her mother protested. Her neighbors called her foolish. Even Evelyn cried that no honest man would forgive such a mistake. But Clara believed promises deserved respect, even if they could no longer be fulfilled. After 2 exhausting weeks crossing rivers, mountains, and dusty trails, the stagecoach finally stopped outside Carter Ranch. A tall young cowboy stood beside the gate repairing a wooden fence. Dust covered his boots, his shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and his weathered hat shaded calm brown eyes that immediately searched for the passenger stepping down. His face lit with cautious hope. "You must be Evelyn." Clara's heart nearly stopped. She could have nodded. She could have lived inside another woman's name. Instead, she swallowed hard. "No." The smile slowly disappeared. "My name is Clara." Confusion crossed Samuel's face. Clara handed him every letter. "My sister wrote these." Samuel stared at the familiar handwriting. "She was supposed to come." "I know. What happened?" Clara lowered her eyes. She became afraid. Silence filled the ranch. Only distant cattle and the creaking windmill could be heard. "I came because I believed someone deserved to tell you face to face." Samuel looked at her for several long moments. "You crossed half the country, just to apologize. I couldn't let you wait forever." Samuel had expected many things. He had prepared himself for disappointment. But he had never expected honesty. Finally, he stepped aside and opened the ranch gate. "You've traveled far." Clara looked surprised. "I'll leave tomorrow." "I didn't ask you to." She looked at him uncertainly. "You'll stay as my guest tonight." I don't want charity." "It's not charity." "What is it?" "It's respect." For the first time since leaving home, Clara felt tears threaten her eyes, not because of sorrow, but because one stranger had treated her with dignity instead of suspicion. Neither of them realized that the biggest choice still waited ahead. The next morning, Clara woke before sunrise, determined to leave before she became a burden. She quietly folded the blanket Samuel had lent her, packed her satchel, and stepped onto the porch. But before she reached the ranch gate, she heard the steady rhythm of hoofbeats behind her. Samuel reined in his horse a few yards away. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Anywhere that needs another pair of hands. You don't even know the next town. I'll find it." He studied her for a long moment before saying, "The cook left 2 weeks ago." The school teacher won't arrive until autumn. Half the ranch hands can't sew a torn shirt, and my books are a mess. If you're looking for honest work, I have plenty." Clara looked at him with surprise. "I thought you'd never want to see me again." "You came here with the truth," Samuel replied. "That's worth more than most people realize." She accepted the job, not as a bride, but as an employee. Samuel made one thing clear from the beginning. "You'll earn the same wages I'd pay anyone else. No favors." That simple sentence earned her trust. Over the following weeks, Clara transformed the ranch in quiet ways no one expected. She repaired curtains that had hung in tatters for years, organized the supply room, planted vegetables beside the old cabin, and began teaching the younger ranch hands to read during their evening meals. The lonely ranch slowly became a place filled with laughter instead of silence. Still, not everyone welcomed her. At church one Sunday, whispers followed her through the wooden pews. "That's the woman who came pretending to be someone else. I heard she tricked Mr. Carter. She probably expects him to marry her anyway." Clara lowered her eyes and endured every cruel word without answering. Samuel heard them too. After the service, one wealthy rancher approached him with a smirk. "You planning to keep the girl?" Samuel answered calmly, "I'm planning to keep a good worker." The man laughed. "You could hire anyone." Samuel looked him straight in the eye. "No, I couldn't hire someone with her honesty." Word spread quickly through the valley. People began watching Clara more closely, not for mistakes, but for proof of the character Samuel believed he had seen. One afternoon, a frightened colt broke through the coral fence. Cowboys rushed after it, but the animal bolted toward a steep ravine. Without hesitation, Clara noticed Samuel's youngest ranch hand frozen in its path. Instead of running away, she sprinted forward, pulled the terrified boy to safety, and fell hard into the dust herself as the colt thundered past. She scraped her hands and bruised her shoulder, but never complained. That evening, Samuel quietly placed a small jar of medicine on the kitchen table. "You should rest tomorrow." Oh, she smiled faintly. "The vegetables won't water themselves." "You always think about everyone else." Clara hesitated before answering. "If you've spent your life keeping promises, it becomes a habit." For the first time, Samuel wondered if fate had brought the wrong sister, or exactly the right one. Yet one question remained unanswered. The letters he had treasured for months were written by Evelyn, but every memory he was beginning to cherish belonged to Clara, and soon he would have to choose between the promise he had once imagined and the woman who had quietly become the heart of his ranch. Spring arrived quietly, painting the prairie with fresh grass and wildflowers. The ranch no longer felt like a place built only for cattle and hard labor. It had become a home filled with laughter. Clara no longer felt like a visitor who had come in someone else's place. She had earned her place through months of honesty, patience, and hard work. Every sunrise found her helping in the kitchen, tending the garden, or caring for injured calves beside Ethan. They worked side by side so naturally that the ranch hands often smiled without saying a word. Everyone could see what neither of them was ready to admit aloud. One afternoon, a rider unexpectedly arrived from the east. It was Clara's older sister, Eleanor, the woman Ethan had originally expected to marry. She had finally gathered enough courage to make the journey, believing she could still claim the future that had once been arranged for her. The ranch fell silent as Ethan welcomed her politely. Clara's heart sank. She packed her few belongings that evening, convinced her duty had finally ended. She had never come searching for love. She had only come to keep her family's promise. Now she believed it was time to leave. Before dawn the next morning, Clara quietly carried her small suitcase toward the ranch gate. She paused for one last look at the home she had grown to love. Suddenly she heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Don't go." She turned to see Ethan standing there, slightly out of breath. "You came because someone else wouldn't," he said softly. "But somewhere along the way, you became the reason this ranch feels alive again." Clara lowered her eyes. "Your promise was to my sister. My promise was arranged on paper," Ethan replied. "But my heart made its own choice." Just then Eleanor walked toward them. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she smiled gently instead of bitterly. I already knew, she whispered, the moment I saw you together yesterday. I didn't lose anything, Clara, because it was never meant to be mine. The sisters embraced tightly, both crying, not from sorrow but from understanding. Eleanor admitted she had never wanted the journey or the lonely life of the frontier. Seeing Clara happy gave her peace instead of regret. Several weeks later, the small frontier church welcomed nearly the entire valley. Ranchers, cowboys, neighbors, and children gathered beneath blooming cottonwood trees as Ethan and Clara exchanged simple vows. There were no grand decorations or expensive celebrations. Only honest smiles, wild flowers, and hearts full of gratitude. Years passed, and the ranch became known for more than fine cattle. Travelers remembered it as the place where strangers were welcomed, children laughed freely, and no one was judged by the path that had brought them there. Clara became beloved across the valley for her kindness, while Ethan often smiled whenever someone asked how they had met. I expected one person, he would answer, but God sent the one I truly needed. Sometimes destiny doesn't arrive exactly as planned. Sometimes it rides in wearing someone else's name, carrying another person's promise, only to reveal the future that was meant for you all along. One brave sister's sacrifice, one cowboy's willingness to trust his heart, and one unexpected choice changed not only 2 lives, but generations that followed. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes that kindness, courage, and true love can change a life.